What's going on, everybody? This is your tour guide around the SWAC C Wells coming at you with another video today. Y'all make sure y'all lock in with us. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and become a part of the SWAC Talk family by becoming a member. 99 cents gets you a membership to the YouTube channel. We have special perks coming at you. We're going to be dropping special members only videos and shorts. I'm going to have rants and reactions to different things that I want to put there. So if you want to get everything, man, become a member of the Swag Talk crew for 99 cents and get down with the get down, man. And so we're going to still be bringing y'all a lot of stuff, swag smoke and everything like that, and all our normal videos. But we also bring y'all that membership tier. So get down with that. Check out the Facebook and Instagram, both Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. And now let's get on with the show, man. Let's do it.
Yo, SWAC talk. Light on the mic, it's a play. See Wells the guy taking us state to state. Catch us Wednesday, Sunday, stats on the buffet. From Grand Darren to the court, we got the say. Football spirals, hoop dreams in the chat. Chopping it up, deep dives on every stat. Texas to Florida, repping border to border. Arkansas to Bama, the vibe getting warmer. SWAC talk, keep the knowledge on deck. See Wells spinning wisdom, gotta show respect. Facts flying higher than a wide receiver's check. From football to hoops, what y'all expect? Guests roll through, dropping stories untold. Legends from the SWAC, spitting straight gold. Locker room vibe, secrets unfold. CW heavy like a championship hold. The South's got a rhythm, a culture to match. Each stat, each fact, another door latch. SWAC talk connects like a perfect pass catch. From Alabama skies to Florida's grass patch. SWAC talk, keep the energy alive. Wednesday to Sunday, where the legends thrive. Facts and stats sharper than a coach's knife. Balling on the mic, that's how we survive. Keep the energy alive. Wednesday to Sunday where the legends thrive. Facts and stats sharper than a coach's knife. Balling on the mic, that's how we survive.
All right, everybody, what's going on? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of Swag Talk, the show we cover the swag inside and out. I am your tour guide around the Swag C Wells coming at you. And as you can see from the title, today we're gonna talk a little bit of Southern football, man, and we're gonna talk about something that a lot of people, have focused on with Southern this past season, and that's basically what happened to the offense. I mean, last season, last season the Jaguars offensively were inconsistent to say the least. Um, so we are gonna kind of talk about why, what happened with this team and why the offense kind of ended up the way it did. It did ultimately show flashes toward the end of the season where they improved. So it's not like it was just a total disaster. I think the offense has some great weapons, and I think they had some solid games. They just never really put a lot of points on the board. And we're gonna kind of look at what made that what I think made that be what it was. So let's go ahead and jump into this. Um, Before we get into what happened, why I think what happened, we got to kind of look at what happened last season. Southern finished 10th in the conference in scoring offense. They scored 272 points on the season, scored 20.2 points per game. That was in 13 games. Um, Excuse me, they scored 20.9 points per game in 13 games, which, like I said, 10th. They finished fourth in total offense at 364 yards per game, scored 31 touchdowns, averaged 5.3 yards per play, had 4,732 total yards of offense on 888 plays, had 2,701 passing yards and 2,031 rushing yards. So as you can see, the offense was able to generate numbers. They just could not put the ball in the end zone when it counted. They were fifth in rushing offense at 156 yards per game, scored 16 touchdowns on the ground, averaged 4.1 yards per carry. Like I said, they had 494 carries, which is the second most in the league. So they ran the ball quite a bit. Other team ran the ball more than them with Jackson State. They ran the ball almost 80 times more than Southern, but Southern ran the ball 20 times more than Alcorn, who was a primarily run first team. So Southern ran, like I said, Southern ran the ball a lot. They averaged 4.1 yards per carry, 2,031 yards on the ground. They finished fourth in passing offense, 203 of 394. That's 51%. Another one of the issues right there that was last in the league in completion percentage. They threw 13 interceptions, which was the third most. They finished with 2,701 yards, which is third in just total yardage through the air. They averaged 6.9 yards per pass with 24 touchdowns. Excuse me, no, with uh, with 15 touchdowns to go with those 13 interceptions, averaged 207 yards per game. So the passing offense, it wasn't necessarily efficient, but they were able to generate yards, and a lot of that was on chunk plays. Um, and so, that kind of explains a lot of what happened. Southern finished fourth in first downs per game at 18.4, 239 total, at 99 first downs on the ground, 118 through the air, and 22 by penalty. They finished fifth in third down conversion rate at 35.7%, 71 of 199. They were seventh in fourth down conversions at 7 for 16 for 43%. Offensively, they allowed 24 sacks, which was fifth in the league. Um, Lost 163 yards on the ground due to sacks. Like I said, they threw those 13 interceptions this past season. So really, turnovers really hurt Southern a good bit. Uh, just real quick, when you speaking of turnovers, the offense fumbled the ball 21 times, lost 11. So they finished with 24 turnovers. So that's going to hurt you a lot. And a lot of those turnovers came at bad times. Um, like I said, they also finished 11th in red zone percentage at 72%. Only team worse than them was Valley. So they did not, they did not have, a lot of success in the red zone when you look at compared to what a lot of other teams do. They were 29 of 40. They had 17 touchdowns in the red zone, 11 rushing touchdowns, 6 passing. They were 12 of 16 in the red zone on field goals. Those 12 field goals were tied for the second most in the league. No, 16 attempts was tied for the second most in the league in the red zone. They had no fumbles in the red zone, 3 interceptions, and 3 turnovers on downs. So basically 6 turnovers in the red zone. And so you can see where things kind of went sideways. Um, to me, one of the biggest things for this team offensively that really put them behind the 8 ball a lot in games, especially early, is the fact that have they did not have great first quarters. This was definitely not a first quarter team. And when you look at all the comebacks and rallies in the second half, this is obviously a second half team. But from the second quarter on, I think this team was a lot better than they were in the first quarter. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of go down, run through every game really quickly and let what their first quarter um, outcomes were. I'm going to go over the number of possessions, what happened on those possessions, and yardage total and points. So starting with McNeese, Southern scored 7 points in that game. As a whole, did not score in the first quarter in this game. They had 3 possessions in the first quarter, finished with 2 punts and a fumble. They had 48 yards and obviously no points. Savannah State, they finished with 4 possessions in that first quarter. They had 1 interception, 1 punt, and 2 field goals. One of those field goals actually came in the second quarter because the drive basically bridged from the first quarter to the second quarter. So basically they scored 3 points in this first quarter, um, with another three coming basically as soon as the second quarter started. Jackson State, excuse me, Savannah State game, they scored 42 points in that game, when they get 42-10 against Jackson State. The offense scored 15 points. They had two possessions in that first quarter, and they both were punts. They finished with 26 yards and no points. Prairie View, they won that game in overtime 31-24. First quarter had three possessions, two punts and a field goal. Um, and so obviously they scored 3 points in that game in the first quarter. Nickel State lost their game 51-7. This was one of the games where they had the most first quarter possessions. They had five in the first quarter in this game. They had four punts and a fumble. Only had 23 yards of offense in the first quarter, and obviously no points. Texas Southern won that game 22-19 in overtime. They finished with three possessions in the first quarter, two punts and a turnover on downs. Finished with 52 yards in that first quarter, and no points. Um, Alcorn, they won the game 24-14. This was one of their better first quarters. They had 104 yards of offense in this game in the first quarter. Um, four possessions, two punts and two turnovers on downs. They turned the ball over on downs at the 2 yard line of Alcorn and at the Alcorn 39. So if it was a fifth, that's basically at minimum 6 points. If you don't, if you kick a field goal on fourth down um, instead of trying to go for it on fourth at the two, that's 3 points. If the other drive doesn't generate much more yardage, maybe you get another first down, kick a field goal, that's 6 points. So that's six extra first quarter points. If you did score two touchdowns on those drives, obviously that's a big difference. But if was a fifth, can't really go back and change anything. But turn the ball over on downs at the 2 yard line is definitely taking points away from your offense. The 39 is a little bit more, leaves a lot more wiggle room because anything can happen between the 39 and the goal line. So there's a whole lot more room for error there. So it's kind of tough to consider that one a scoring possibility because number one, I think got to be in the red zone really to be considered a scoring possibility. Against FAMU, they had four first quarter possessions, 45 yards, three punts, and a field goal. Um, so one of the few games that they did score in the first quarter. Alabama A&M, they had four possessions in that game in the first quarter, 39 yards of offense in the first quarter. They fell behind 10-0 because the offense really could not get going in this game early. Three punts and a missed field goal. Um, that kind of put them behind a ball a bit. But second quarter on, the offense was able to rally, and they won that game 25-20. Against Pine Bluff, they had three possessions in the first quarter. They went punt, INT, and then a touchdown in the second quarter because the last drive of the first quarter bridged over to the second quarter. So maybe if you get something going early, um, you find a way to kind of get that game going right. Bethune-Cookman, I actually accidentally skipped that game. 25-23 in overtime was in five overtimes with that game. Game was tied at 10 at the end of regulation. Bethune led that game 3-0 till midway the fourth quarter. So as you can think, this was not a good offensive game for Southern. First quarter, they only had two possessions, and they punted both times, finished with 22 yards. Now they had a drive, they had a long run on that first drive down to the 6 yard line. Play was called back by penalty and could not get anything going there. So obviously no points in the first quarter there. And then against Grambling, another five possession first quarter, four punts. One of those was blocked and a touchdown, which was their first and only first quarter touchdown of the season. It came in game 12. That's all, that's always going to do you in. 83 yards in that quarter, um, and the one touchdown. Jackson State in the championship game, three possessions, two punts, and a field goal that came in the second quarter. Again, another drive that bridged the first and second quarters. So they finished with no points in the first quarter, 37 yards, um, and was able to kind of keep that game close until the early portion of the third quarter before Jackson State blew it open. So to me, like I said, the main factor with this team struggling was first quarter. So they finished with 741 yards in the first quarter, 19 points in the first quarter, 4 field goals, a touchdown, um, a missed field goal, and a turnover on down to the 2 yard line. They averaged 57 yards per quarter and 1.4 yards per play. Now, like I said, they did have 2 or 3 drives that finished in points immediately in the second quarter. So those could have been first quarter points if those drives maybe ended a little bit sooner, but they obviously didn't. Another thing that really weighed this team down, even though they finished fifth in third down conversion rates, they had some games where they really struggled to convert on third downs. 7 of 18 against McNeese on third downs. Uh, 11 of 20 against Savannah State, which is above 50%. Um, 5 of 12 against Jackson State. 4 of 15 against Prairie View. 2 of 12 against Nichols. 4 of 15 against Texas Southern. Uh, 9 of 18 against Alcorn. That's another 50% game there. 2 of 16 against FAMU. 7 of 17 against Alabama A&M. 6 of 11 against Pine Bluff. 6 of 14 against Bethune-Cookman. Uh, 2 of 14 against Grambling. That game against Grambling, and this is not a defensive show, but I just wanted to point out that there were two third down conversions in that whole game between the two teams, and Southern had them both. So neither team could do anything on third down in that game, which was a 24-14 win for Southern. But they finished 2 of 14 on third down there. And against Jackson State in the championship game, which they lost by a score of 41-13, they finished going 6 of 17 on third down, which is not great. But when you consider how the offense kind of kind of got stagnant in the second half, it's not that bad either. Um, Again, this team did not really go for it a lot on fourth down. When you look at what they did this past season, they actually finished the season. Um, just to run back through it, they finished 7 of 16 on third down for 43%. So again, not a lot of attempts, not a lot of conversions on third downs, but they went for it. Um, they went for it 16 times, which was sixth in the league. So about average midway point in third and fourth down attempts. Uh, Not really aggressive, but not passive either on fourth downs. Finished 0 for 1 against McNeese. They were 0 for 1 against Jackson State in the first matchup, 1 or 2 against Prairie View, 0 for 2 against Nichols, 0 for 1 against Texas Southern, 1 of 3 against Alcorn, uh, 2 or 2 against FAMU, 1 of 1 against Alabama A&M, 0 for 1 against Bethune-Cookman, which actually came in the red zone, but that was in the third quarter or the fourth quarter. Um, did not attempt a fourth down against Pine Bluff. They were did not attempt a fourth down against Grambling, and they were 1 for 1 against Jackson State in the championship game. So again, not a lot of attempts there, and not a lot of conversions, but still decent there. Um, Another factor that really slowed this team down was sacks. And one of the things for Southern offensively, when you look at this team this past season, the offense kind of got a bit better at about the midway point of the season. They kind of made some adjustments on the offensive line. Now, it really doesn't really make a lot of change when you look at what the offense did in terms of sacks allowed. They allowed 24 sacks, basically 12 in the first 6 games, 12 in the second. But I think a lot of the sacks that were taken by this team were bad decisions by the quarterback. Now, early, I think the offensive line kind of had some struggles with blocking, because when you look at their first 6 games, they did not give up a sack against McNeese. They gave up 4 to Savannah State, 3 to Jackson State, 2 to Prairie View, 3 to Nichols, and 1 to Texas Southern. Then you follow it up with none against Alcorn, 2 against FAMU, none against Alabama A&M, 2 against Bethune, 1 against Pine Bluff, and 3 against Jackson and Grambling. So Jackson obviously has a great defensive line. Grambling defensive line was pretty strong in that game. Everybody else in that late portion of the season, you had 5 combined sacks. So I mean, you had 5 combined sacks there. So there's not a lot, there was some continuity starting to develop in the offensive line. So as the season went on, a lot of those numbers went down. Tackles for loss, they gave up 3 to McNeese in the first game, 8 to Savannah State, 4 to Jackson State, 11 to Prairie View, 7 to Nichols, 5 to Texas Southern. Then it was 2 against Alcorn, 4 against FAMU, 4 against Alabama A&M, 4 against Bethune, 2 against Pine Bluff, 11 against Grambling, and 8 against Jackson State. So again, you can see the numbers kind of trail off, and then they kind of got a little bit bigger at the end because both of those defenses kind of really, got on Southern offensively and made it a little bit tough for them. Another factor when you look at this team is the rushing attack. 66 yards against McNeese, 191 against Savannah State, 29 against Jackson State, 191 against Prairie View, 32 against Nichols, and then from then on, they did not run for less than 100 yards. 167 against Texas Southern, 295 against Alcorn, 122 against FAMU, 147 against Alabama A&M, and then they had a run of 3 straight 200 plus yard games, 233 against Bethune, 216 against Pine Bluff, and 209 against Grambling, following that up with 133 yards against Jackson State. So a lot of those numbers, really, you can see the numbers start to generate from the Texas Southern game on. I think that's when a lot of those offensive changes were made, and the offense really started to get clicking on the ground. Um, 2 games early in the season, almost at 200 yards. The Prairie View one is more impressive because it was a conference game on the road, and the other one was a D2 team. So really offensively, they kind of got better running the ball. Um, and like I said, one of the other main issue I had was sacks, and McNeese no sacks, 4 sacks against Savannah State, which is a season high. Noah Biden had 3 of those sacks, and T-Set had 1. Against Jackson State, they had 3 sacks. Biden had 2, was responsible for 2. T-Set had 1. He went out with an injury. Prairie View, they had 2 sacks. Biden took 1. Woods took a sack in his only appearance in that game. He had 1 play and came back out. Against Nichols, Woods took 3 sacks in the second half when they had mop-up duty. Texas Southern, T-Set took the 1 sack that they had. I think that sack was a strip sack that led to a Texas Southern touchdown later on that drive. Alcorn no sacks, which to me is really solid when you look at Alcorn defensively. They had some really great dudes on their D line, but Southern was able to manage to not allow a sack. 2 sacks against FAMU. T-Set took both of those in the second half. Against Alabama A&M, T-Set did not get sacked in that game, so no sacks for Southern there. Against Bethune, they allowed 2 sacks to T-Set early before he got pulled. Pine Bluff, 1 sack in that game. Jalen Woods had that sack. Grambling finished with 3 sacks, all on Jalen Woods. And Jackson State had 4 sacks, 3 for T-Set and 1 for Biden. Biden came in late in that game. So when you look at, how this team, was able to maintain, they lost 320 yards total, but 157 of those yards were non-sack yards. So they really did a pretty decent job of not losing yardage, when they ran the ball. Like I said, they had those games where they kind of struggled with tackles for loss, but for the most part, the offense was constantly moving forward in the run game. The sacks and penalties really kind of put this team behind the 8 ball, faced a lot of 3rd and longs, and just was unable to consistently convert. And that's gonna always do you in when when you're playing, 3rd, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And your offense is not that explosive or that efficient, you're gonna have a tough time. And one of the things I look, explosive plays are another factor in the offense. So when you look at guys longest plays, there's not a lot of explosive plays there. Now some guys had more than one, but looking at their longs of the season, Kobe Dillon had a 74-yard run, which was the longest for the team that season. Kendrick Grimes had a 51-yarder, CJ Russell 28, T-Set 31, Noah Biden had a 40-yarder. And after that, Tyler Kirkwood had a 12-yard run. Nobody else had a run longer than 8 yards. And so there wasn't a lot of explosiveness in the run game. Now, obviously, a guy like Kendrick Grimes had a few long runs himself, Kobe Dillon had a couple long runs, but as a whole, there wasn't a lot there. The longest passes on the season, Biden had a 54 yarder, T said had a 76 yarder, and Woods had a 71 yarder. Um, Individual guys, Darren Morris had a 40 yarder. Chandler Whitfield had a 54 yarder. He had a couple other longer passes. Dupree Fuller had a 31 yarder. Kirkwood had a 54 yarder, 25 for Minor, 37 for the Travion Brown, 71 for Cam Jefferson. That went for a touchdown. 20 for Quay Davis, 76 for Khalil Harris. So 14 for Kobe Brown. Kendrick Grimes had a 37 yarder. Cam Jackson had a 21 yarder. 18 for Kobe Dillon, 23 for Jason Gabriel, and CJ Russell had a 17 yarder. So the passes were a little bit more, the passing game was a little bit more explosive. And a lot of that, was, I don't know, was long, long down in distances. You got to kind of pick up those tough conversions, or, sometimes you were able to air it out down the field because you ran the ball pretty well, like that pass to Cam Jefferson against Pine Bluff. So they ran the ball pretty well at that point, and they were able to hit for a long pass. Um, and that explosiveness is kind of what was missing. Southern was steady running the ball. Not a lot, like I said, not a lot of explosive runs, but steady running the ball. They lost 51 yards against McNeese on the ground. They lost 20. They lost 37 yards rushing to Savannah State, 21 against Jackson State. All those yards were sack yards against Jackson State. They lost 18 against Prairie View. They lost 28 against Nichols, 27 against Texas Southern. Seven. They only lost 7 yards on the ground against Alcorn. That's all. That's a game where you're constantly moving forward, and they had a really good game that game. Uh, FAMU, they lost 16 yards. Alabama A&M, they lost 8. Again, another game where you're constantly moving forward, no sacks. So your offense, is moving forward pretty much all game. Bethune-Cookman, they lost 15 yards in sacks. Pine Bluff, they only lost 4 yards on the ground, and those were sack yards. Grambling, they lost 37 yards on the ground. And Jackson State in the championship game, they lost 45 yards on the ground, 26 sack yards. So, for the most part, this was, like I said, this was a team that just did not have the explosiveness, and that kind of hurt them. So if I was to kind of give you my reasons of what went wrong, it's simple. Uh, Slow starts. That means not enough possessions, not enough yardage in those possessions, and not enough points in that quarter. So a poor first quarter, scoring 19 points in 13 games, 19 points in 13 first quarters is just not going to get it done. In terms of being able to be a better offense. Giving up 24 sacks, even though that's like in the middle of the league, that's still a lot of sacks. Um, and just not having consistent quarterback play. When you look at Southern, they had I believe they had 3 games this season where the guy who started the game played the whole game and did not come out. That's T-Set against Alabama A&M, Jalen Woods against Pine Bluff, and Jalen Woods against Grambling. No, those were the only games that nobody came in reserve. Whether it was because helmet got knocked off, guy got hurt, being ineffective. Even though ironically Jalen Woods did get hurt in the Bayou Classic, I don't think he came out of that game. So the one game you had a guy get hurt, he did not come out. So that when you play 13 games and in 10 of your 13 games you play at least 2 quarterbacks, you're just not going to be that consistent. And to me, that's probably one of the biggest things that really hampered this offense. And the fact that this team finished 7-1 in conference, it really, they really won a lot of times in spite of what the offense did. Now, numerically, this offense was not bad. If you take this same offense numerically and you put their scoring, let's just say you put that offense scoring wise, let's say you put them at uh 24 points per game, which would be sixth in the league. That's not a big jump. That's like 3 points per game more. Um, the offense is looked at a little bit differently then, but the fact that you look at the totals, which is kind of, which is kind of what's the most important thing, putting points on the board. Your offense just doesn't really score a lot of points, and then you also have to take into account that the defense scored a touchdown. So that's even though it all adds up together, but when you look at what the offense did, that kind of takes off one touchdown that you scored. So your numbers drop even more there. But like I said, for this season, it's simple. Have to start quick, man. You have to have, better first quarters. You don't have to score a touchdown every time you got the ball in the first quarter. But, to score, a couple field goals, have a couple time consuming drives, things that can kind of keep your defense on their front foot instead on their back foot, that makes you better offensively. And it makes the game a lot. It makes the game open up for you. Even like when you look at the Alcorn game, that's probably one of the games that, like I said, had a better first quarter than most. They turned the ball over on downs twice, but those were two good drives. So the offense was already kind of clicking. It's just executing at that point. When you're trying to get your offense going late in the second quarter, and you don't have a lot of yardage, and you haven't scored, and maybe opponent up, 10 points or so. You're playing from behind already, and you're playing catch up. So a lot of the time, the defense did a lot to bail this offense out in terms of helping them score. But it's really just simple, man. Take care of the football and have better starts. And I think a lot of this will fall, will go your way. So with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC. See well signing out, and I will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.